Welcome to the first lecture of the final session of today. And this is going to be given by Nandini. No introductions necessary, I suppose, because you've already had a tutorial by her. So this is, part of the research she's doing as part of the epigraphy lab, where she's actually backtracking how exactly Brahmi was deciphered. So, like usually in our textbooks, we all read this one-line thing that James Prinsep deciphered Brahmi. But deep reading of its history shows that the story is much more complicated than that. And this is a project that Nandini has been working for the past 2 years. So it's a wonderful case study of how exactly decipherment occurs as a network enterprise or as a group enterprise than rather the genius of one single person.
Thank you. So yesterday's tutorial was more about how Brahmi got deciphered. I mean, how they were at least trying to decipher the Brahmi. So I think I tried to give you a glance how usually inscriptions are deciphered, like from tracing from present to past. And as I mentioned during the tutorial, that it took Prinsep just 3 days to decipher, but I remember how you people reacted to the plates and how interesting or difficult or confusing it was it for you. So, yeah. Uh, so again, just a brief introduction why I'm speaking about Brahmi today. So, as I mentioned that I've been working on this for last 2 years, and ICL has this objective of working on Indus script. And Brahmi is the earliest inscription of South Asia. And when it comes to the early Indian writing, early Indian script, that's the Ashokan Brahmi. So, in order to do a comparative study, in order to find any link or trace between the earliest two, we started working with Brahmi. To be honest, initially it was not the plan, like how Brahmi got deciphered or Brahmi's network, I mean, establishing the network was the plan. But how this earliest script got deciphered, it gradually became a part of our study. And when we took a deep dive into it, we found that it was not the only person, James Prinsep. There were more other people who were involved in it. So just a quick recap from yesterday's thing. Prinsep and his arrival in 1890. And after he came here, what happens? He was, of course, he was appointed as the SA master. He was here, he was in Calcutta for a while, and after that he was transferred to Benares. So what is happening there? He was, what to say, there was no quote unquote any institutional training for archaeology or numismatics or that kind of thing for these people. So it was their interest that led to explore or study, observe multiple things. So when he was in the Benares, apart from writing on coins, I mean, he didn't start writing on coins when he was in Benares. He was more into the maps, scenes and scenarios of the Benares and the Ghats. He published a book later. I'll be speaking on that later. So this interest about India, India's past, that this was not new with Prinsep. So while these colonial administrators were coming, so the important part for them to look at the back, like what was happening there, like what happened there, what was their history. So in order to dig into their history of India, what they considered as the source was mostly the treaties, the Dharma Shastra, Sutras, and they apparently found them as the law book, or maybe that's what Indians were following in it. So in order to look at the past, gradually the interest shifted on the Sanskrit language, the Vedic culture, Vedic past. And we, from 1770 onwards, we started observing the publication of various translations by these scholars. So before I talk about Prinsep, so a small context may require here, because what was the context? Why Prinsep all of a sudden started talking about coins, inscriptions, and etc. So this is William Jones, and his arrival in Calcutta was 1783. And he arrives in Calcutta in 1783, and he establishes the Asiatic Society of Bengal in 1784. Isn't it very surprising or funny? Like, he arrives in 83 and establish such a prestigious institution in 84. So when I started exploring a bit on him, it actually gave me an idea that when he was a student in Oxford, he already developed a interest in the Oriental language and culture. So he was already aware of the India's past, India's quote unquote glorious past, and the materials and the sources, the primary sources, what were available. So he took all the effort to learn the earlier languages. And when he arrives in 1783, within a year, this thing is happening. And from 1788 onwards, Asiatic Researches, this volume is getting published, and that was totally dedicated to on the India's past, on India's, I mean, they were doing so many kind of field works, whatever they were observing, whatever they were finding, it was all dedicated to this. And I would say it was not restricted only to the inscriptions and the monuments. There were many other topics, like whatever they were finding it interesting. It can be fossil, it can be topography, it can be barometer, everything. So after 1784, this is the second person I already introduced to you yesterday, Wilkins. And Wilkins is little, again, a small background is required here. He belonged to a family who were already associated with printing and press. So he had keen interest in characters, typesets, etc. And when he's coming here, what he's doing, the translation of Bhagavad Gita. So this was one of his major project, and the Westerners got introduced to the India's past with this. And from 1788, the first volume, here he is publishing the articles on the inscriptions, the 3 inscriptions you saw yesterday, the plates, if you remember. So while I'm talking about 1784, 88, that was strictly about the Bengal and India. But what was happening outside Bengal? So if I look at this person, Sharpali and G.F. Grotefend, they have already discovered cuneiform and hieroglyphics by this time. And C.L. Grotefend, he was the son of G.F. Grotefend, and what he did, he discovered Kharoshti in 1836. So the ground was already set, and we would only see the French and the German scholars who had already made a bigger contribution in the field of decipherment, in the field of discovery. So can we sense some sort of diplomacy, some sort of what to say? Sorry? Rivalry would be a strong word, but yeah, rivalry would be a strong word, but yeah, of course. So it was the turn of probably the Britishers had some sort of idea in their mind, they had to contribute something. So if we look at the situation of 1821, it is the Asiatic de Paris, and the names, what I've got from there, I mean the sources, so it would look like the British scholars Wilkins, H.H. Wilson, Colebrooke, along with the German scholars and the French scholars, they were actually meeting there. So of course there was a buzz, there was words among these people that this discovery, decipherments, these things were happening. So if I put Princeps 1837 discovery or decipherment of Brahmi, that was something just happened out of the context, or a genius all of a sudden did it in 1837. Won't it be little difficult to accept? What do you say? So maybe this broader context already set the stage for Princep to take a step further for his decipherment. So as I was telling, Princep, when he was in Benares. Of course, he published this writing on Benares Illustrated. But apart from this, the articles, I mean, chronologically, I have just mentioned 4 articles. This is one of those 4. What he wrote apart from coins and inscription. And I would say not only this 4, there were many other articles. I've just mentioned 4, and chronologically from 1832 to 1837. This is just a glimpses that his interest was not restricted only in the archaeological part, or not only on the coins or on the inscription. He was also exploring the other parts and other aspects of the continent. So, 1837, what happens in 1840? He passed away in 1840 actually, Princep. He returned back Britain in 1814, he passed away. So, the thing Alexander Cunningham wrote in his 4 reports that it took him exactly 3 days, and I remember from the writing, it's Princep is with all his excitement writing to Cunningham like "Jaldi pahunchna hai, jaldi chalo." So it's written in English, but that's what he meant from there. Like he was already in the verge of deciphering the legend, and as I said, 3 days thing, 3 days myth, but again the broader context, again what was happening beyond India and in the world context. So, as I just said, like 3 days genius, and this is the 1834 volume from when Princess started writing on, particularly on inscription. So, we would find the names like T.S. Burt, A. Troyer, W.H. Mean, and B.H. Hodgson. Hodgson, he had quite a few achievements and contribution in this field. He was working on Nepal. And an interesting part about this, like these people were working pan-India, like they were working in the different corners of the country, and they were sending Princep the specimens. They were sending continuously the examples or whatever the data they were collecting from the sites. So this is, I think I showed this picture yesterday as well. This is the eye copy of the Allahabad pillar inscription. This was drawn by T.S. Burt. So, when we look at the relevant volumes of Asiatic Society of Bengal, this particular thing from 1780 to 1840 time frame, so we found at least this many people apart from Princep who were directly involved in this whole procedure. And if I look at the characters, as I already mentioned, T.S. Burt, Captain Troyer, this is General Ventura. General Ventura, he was working in the northwestern part, and from where he found the coins of the Scythians, Indo-Parthians, and he would send them to Princep for the further reading. And when this thing was happening, I mean, when he was trying to decipher Lat or the other script, what he was mentioning, he was also looking for, with the, probably knowingly or unknowingly, he was also reading the Kharoshti coins as well. So both the process were happening in a simultaneous way. In the simultaneous process, it's not that he dedicatedly, he was looking only for Brahmi inscription or Brahmi decipherment. So Ventura, and then comes Stevenson. Karli cave, I think some of them are aware of the Karli caves. There are the Buddhist inscription, and those are from 1st century CE. So those are the Ali Brahmi inscription, those are found there. So Stevenson was working there. Hodgson, as I mentioned, he was working mostly on the area of Nepal and that part. And this thing, Mahabalipuram. So this is where we will be going on Saturday, the Tiger Cave. So there, Tiger Cave, what is happening? There is a Grantha script, there is an inscription. So the Mahabalipuram inscription, they marked it, and initially their idea was like it was somehow related to Brahmi inscription, which later found out to be not. So apart from these people, there were 1 or 2 characters I would like to mention here. One was the Madhava Rao, and other person was Sharada Prasad Chakraborty. So the first person, he was the librarian of the Benares College. So what he was doing, he made a chart for Princip. He gave a reading of the inscription for Princip, which Princip actually accepted, and he took his translation and took the reading of it. And when it comes to Sharada Prasad Chakraborty, he again gave a reading of the plates, and Princip actually relied more on Sharada Prasad's writing because he was aware of English language. He was formally trained in English, so he thought like his translation would make more sound. I mean, more relevant to the context. So from this network, from this diagram, the characters what we got up apart from Princip, quite a few. So I'll be highlighting two of them. One is Wilkins and the second is Lassen. Okay. So again, like whoever attended the tutorial yesterday, so you have seen the characters, like what he designed at that time. It was during 1778. He designed the characters, and he was the first to make this typeset. And these were his publication from Asiatic Researches Volume 1 and 2. So whenever I'm just going back and saying like Princip did the decipherment, Princip read the Brahmi, of course he read the Brahmi, he read the 3rd century BC Brahmi. But if I look back at this translation, at this works, by this time, 1788, 1789, these things were, the letter Brahmi inscriptions were already read by Charles Wilkins, along with the Siddhamachika script of the Pala period. So this is the inscription of Anantavarman, what we saw yesterday, and this is probably the only what Wilkins left for us, because the problem with Wilkins's work is we hardly have any chart, or we hardly have any idea how he did it. In case of Princip, it's not that Princip exactly wrote the formula, or Princip exactly told us this was the particular way, or this is how he managed to read all the inscription. But for Wilkins, it is still a mystery. So, but as of the epigraphy, as of the archaeology goes, as we know, and I'm emphasizing on the fact from yesterday, like from tracing or from emphasizing on the present day inscription, present day writing, we try to trace back to the late. So possibly his familiarity with the Devanagari script, Bangla script, and then the Siddhamachika, and that finally led to read the 6th century CE Anantavarman's inscription. The next character is Christian Lassen. So anyone familiar with the coins, Armenian coins? This is a Greek coin, Indo-Greek coin, and which has a legend both in Brahmi and as well as in Greek. So what is happening? Lassen gave a reading of this coin, and he was able to read the term agathoklia. Agathoklia. The letter 1 is the Greek legend of it. So he was a German Indologist, and this was the letter he wrote to Princip, and Princip published it in one of his article in 1836, that that Lassen was able to read almost a correct reading of the coin Agathoklia. But surprisingly, or in all this article, in all this writing of Asiatic Society Bengal from 1832 onwards, I never found the term he's saying like someone has deciphered or someone has already identified the characters. It is always Mr. Wilkins, Dr. Wilkins, or Mr. Charles Wilkins, or for this, Professor Lassen of Bonn of native legend on the coin of Agathoklia depicted in volume 3. This plate that professor's letter, this moment received, the legend on the coin of Agathocles is, in my opinion, in another character. I think we may recognize the Brahmi character, what he has written. So he identifies the fact that that Lassen read the coin correctly, but when it comes to the final reading, when it comes to the final identification of Brahmi characters or the Brahmi script, we hardly get to know about these people. It's only James Princip on 1837 read.
He got all the effects set most Brahmas guys up there.
Typeset, I don't think. Yeah, I get it. I don't think it's a typeset because in most of the time it's the handwritten part that should be. Is it? Yeah.
Well, the English is basically done in the usual letterpress format and so on. But it's an interesting question that, exactly how they did, we don't know, this kinds of printing. But Princip himself mentions in some places that there was a particular plate which he engraved himself. So clearly they were doing all this.
Because for most of the plates, those are handwritten. I mean, whatever we find, the eye copies or whatever, even for the coins, those are hand-drawn things.
No. He meant for the printing part.
No,
Yeah. So the printing part, the plate has to be prepared. And the thing is that the English is basically done by actually putting these fonts. The fonts are already done. And so you just insert it in your line and do it. But for the hand printed thing, probably it's just one particular piece of lead which is cast according. I don't know, to what extent lithography was done at the time that this was printed in 1836. But you may be right. I'm not a printing expert by any means. Possible is what I guess.
Because for a few of the plates, we get the information lithographed by Princip, lithographed by Bird. I mean, the term is there. In particular, yeah, that's okay. So, this is in 1837 again, and these are the writings. These are the titles by James Princip, and this was on the verge of finally deciphering the Ashokan inscription and identifying the character Devanam Piyadasi. And in this writings, he finally does a comparative analysis, as I've been telling from yesterday, like how he was looking at the inscription. This was the Dholi inscription. And Dholi, he mentions in the Udaygiri and Khandagiri Katak, the last article actually, there he talks about how the comparative part was going. And then finally he identifies the characters, Devanam Piyanam Piyapadasi, and we find another person. He was George Turner, and he confirmed from Sri Lanka that Devanam Piyanam Piyapadasi and Ashoka, they were the same person. And finally, we finally discover the ruler Ashoka, and all these inscriptions belong to him. So, going back to the diagram again. So, when I was saying 1837, Princip's final discovery, decipherment, won't it be an injustice if we just forget these people or their contribution? Because what is happening, if I'm looking at the 4 reports of Cunningham again, he mentions there were the first generation of archaeologists, and some of them were, he just mentioned quote unquote, closet archaeologist. And by this term, he means some of them would be in the office, and the others who were actually doing the field work. Because by archaeology or archaeologist, we of course mean the field work and the extensive work they do on the field every day. Discovery and excavation and exploration, that's the word for them. So Princip, if we look at that, he hardly did such exercise. He was stationed in the office, And being the secretary of the Asiatic Society of Bengal, of course, it was some privileged position, I would say, that he would have access from Nepal to Punjab everywhere, and people would send him the specimen again and again for reading. So, since I've been talking about the Brahmi network, if we look at this network, this is for steam engine. So, who discovered steam engine? Who comes in? James Watt. But again, if we look at the structure, he was not the only man or only person who finally contributed in it. So apart from him, there were people who simultaneously worked on the same thing. So from the previous slide and from this slide, the idea of the discovery, I mean, whenever a discovery happens, whenever something new has happened, we often try to claim or we try to credit only one person for all of it. All the credit goes to particular one person. But behind that whole setup, there are these unsung boys who just keeps contributing on their own. No, I probably just mentioned about Madhav Rai and the other.
No, I didn't mean that. Popular literature aside, if you think about it, where would he have learned a lot of his local Indian script stuff from? He would have had to pick it up from the Pandits or who, right? So, are there any records of people of that type mentioned anywhere?
So, as I mentioned that he was in Benares for quite a long time at the very beginning. So, he mentions about the Pandits from whom he learned the native language and how he got interested in the later part. But the question you ask, at that time, we know there were the munshis who were doing this job, who worked as a translator, who worked as a tutor for this administrative people. But funny part is, most of the time, these people just probably they were too busy to mention them in this work.
So the point that you made there, just to expand on that, it is not actually, what you said is absolutely right. Prinsep by himself was not probably the only one who deciphered Brahmi, took a whole lot of activities around that. The two other points I want to make here, there is a lot of information to support that Brahmi wasn't exactly something forgotten or unreadable by some Indians. Two evidences for that. One is the form of characters take a long time, about 800 to 1,000 years to be completely phased out. In inscriptions that I'm extremely familiar with, I see 5th century forms and 15th century inscriptions. It's not died down. It's there, suddenly somewhere you find a form of this type, which means people were aware, some people were continue to use the older forms.
By 5th and 15th, do you mean the 3rd century Brahmi or the later Brahmi?
I'm not talking Brahmi, I'm talking script in general. Specific examples I'm taking about are Kannada, which is what I know well. There's a 5th century form of a character, which is in 15th century inscriptions. Okay. How's that possible? There's no continuity of usage of that. We don't have samples there, but suddenly you see a form surface.
One inscription, or there are a lot of specific?
There are many characters like this, not just one inscription in multiple inscriptions. Okay. So the fact that this form dies out fast is actually wrong. It stays for a long time, number one. And number two, inscriptions were recopied. Okay. Whenever I'm talking about stone, and again, I'm not talking Brahmi at all, the tradition of recopying inscriptions is quite common. When the stone breaks, flakes away, wears away, they would rewrite it. So they would be reading stuff which is 500, 800 years old, and then rewriting it in the new form. When they rewrite it, they're saying, I'm making a copy. So the date, etc. is all carried forward, which means people were very were proficient enough to read something which was written about 500, 600 years ago. I'm talking 10th century, 11th century. They were able to read.
Rewriting of inscription, are you talking about any particular area?
I'm only talking about non-Brahmi inscriptions. I'm talking about general. Okay, for me, inscriptions is everything. So where I'm coming from is the people of the place, not so much the script or the language. Okay, so if somebody sitting here, let's say in Taravani, could read an inscription written in Taravani 600, 800 years ago, they were proficient, they were competent enough to read the script of that time and recopy.
By this, would you mean like everyone could read the inscription?
I mean, anyone who was making the copy. So let's just kind of hear me the argument out. So the point I'm making is, reading ancient scripts was not forgotten. It was known. It had to be done because recopying manuscripts, recopying copper plates, recopying stone, recopying everything was a part of the natural ecosystem. Okay? And recopying typically happened 500, 800 years, 1,000 years, whatever the material lasted for. Okay? So it is very hard to believe it took a princeps to decipher Brahmi. It is that he may have been the one who kind of screamed and made a noise of it and documented it. But I did think a lot of Indians were very competent in reading this. We don't know the full story yet.
But when it comes to Brahmi, from 3rd century BC to the later period, I mean, whatever I was showing yesterday, what we see usually a chronological evolution. If the script remains static, then why do we see such and such?
Say that again. I have not said the script remains static. Okay. What I am saying is the script remains in some form, in a few characters, for a long time. There are multiple forms of a character.
That's what I was asked. That's the process they also followed, right? They did a comparative analysis, right?
No. So listen to me again. Let me repeat this. Let's say there's a character Ka written in, say, 0 AD. That form of Ka will surface in a 10th century writing as well, in addition to other forms of Ka. Is this okay? So far you're following me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The question is, the point is that the princeps alone is, was a person who deciphered this Brahmi. Seems a little far-fetched from the natural point. It's not a question, it's a point.
I mean, just to answer your point, since you were saying like the script, the character would remain same. This is how it usually goes. If you mean the character remains in the inscription.
Now, what I'm saying is, in addition to the last form, the first form is also filed simultaneously in the later times.
Yeah, because the character would be same. Because I probably mentioned yesterday, when the material gets changed, when the scribe gets changed, of course there will be a change in the handwriting.
Over time as well.
Of course, because there were foreign and external influence, right?
Right. So therefore, if it spans so long, it is quite possible that other people were able to identify characters, not just Princeps himself. That's all the point is.
Anyway, the point of showing this particularly, that he was probably not the only person who was particularly working on this. And when I look at a certain discovery, certain decipherment or something new, so we often try to credit a particular one person. So there is always a backdrop. And if we look at any scientific discovery, what would happen? The idea what we usually get from there, apart from that single node, I mean, the person who is credited with the final achievement, there would be other people, there would be other supporting hands who will be continuously providing the resources. And finally, that thing takes place. And the other thing, at the very beginning of my talk, I started talking about the context. I mean, the right time and the right context becomes even more important and interesting. Why that particular moment had hit, or that particular moment had sparked to the final decipherment or final discovery of a new thing. So by this, I would like to conclude, like, whenever we talk about the decipherment, or whenever we try to credit Prinsep was the one who deciphered Brahmi, maybe it's the time we just correct the sentence, or we can just modify the sentence by saying, like, he read the 3rd century BC Brahmi, or he read the Ashokan Brahmi, because as I shown you, there were other people, and Wilkins did his job already earlier than Prinsep. So that's it. Thank you. Anyone? Yeah, please.
Already as the data with the 6th century BC to 4th century BC. His book is Astadhyay. Which script has been used by him?
Exactly. So here there is a confusion, and Harry Falk and Oscar von Hindenburg, they have some recent writings on that. First of all, dating Panini itself is a bit confusing thing, right? It's a whether he belonged to 4th century BC or not. And if we actually look at the location of Panini, the area, that is the northwestern area. That's the Gandhar. So in that area, if I look back again in 3rd century BC, what Ashoka did, he didn't issue a Brahmi inscription. He did a Kharoshti inscription, and that's the Shabaskari and Manchera. So by the term lipi, if Panini exactly meant Brahmi cannot be possible, but we can't omit the fact that Kharoshti, since Kharoshti was already there, and he could have actually pointed to Kharoshti, that can be possible. So, because in Northwest, Kharoshti was quite evident there, and even in the later period, when we look at the bilingual coins, we see the Greek as well as the Kharoshti on the both this side. So, probably by that he also could have meant the Kharoshti lipi.
Kiladi and all, we are getting like 5th century, 6th century BC Tamil Brahmi potsherds. So, will this push back the dating of Brahmi, which could be possible that Ashokan Brahmi might have emerged from or developed from this early Tamil Brahmi inscriptions?
If you remember from Professor Sina's talk, he was mentioning the Hangul and the connection between the Brahmi inscription. Like,
Yes.
Hangul was particularly designed by the king for particularly to give order and all. And even if we look at the Brahmi's thing, how the inscription or how writing is done, it's even for Ashoka's purpose, it was to give orders or give proclamation of his Dhamma and all, right? So there is a connectivity with that, like it was purposely designed designed script. But when you are saying the recent excavation and recent findings of Brahmi, there has to be have that evident, that much of quantifying data, right? You know this better than me, right? So the amount of...
thing is like, apart from Kodumanal and Kiladi, they are getting good number of potsherds from the small sites. Like recently there were Mangur, almost 25 sites as of now. They are getting potsherds which inscribed potsherds. Also, apart from that, we are getting the names, and abroad also, even in Oman, Korori, we are having Tamil Brahmi inscription which mentioned Nandai Kiran. So that basically means group name of some person which you can find in Sangam text as well.
So when I'm looking at Ashoka's inscription, particularly when he is taking all the effort, even in the southern part of India, he is inscribing those inscription and all. So by that time, I have to understand, or I have to accept the fact, like, at least if not all, at least some people were familiar or aware of the script, if not all, because I can't say everyone was aware.
Because these
yeah.
archaeologists like Kerajan and all, they are saying during the Sangam period, this could be possible of the widespread literacy rate in early historic Tamilagam, because this has been found from almost 25 sites, not only the port sites and hinterland sites, but also from the rural sites, like small sites which is only having this indigenous ceramics. Because when we talk about this Kodumanal, Keeladi and all, we are getting non-Indian ceramics. But there are some sites from we are getting only Indian ceramics. From these sites, we are getting potsherds as well, like inscribed potsherds.
So, isn't it like after this time we see after Ashoka's 3rd century BC thing, if we...
Before the Ashokan.
No, I'm saying this, like, if we go forward, we will finally see the division between the northern and southern. It's like, technically...
You mean...
the characteristic changes in the scripts, right? Up there.
Not that much, but... Yeah, kind of.
The characteristic
Yes.
changes were there, right?
Yeah.
So when you were talking about this Tamil Brahmi, the potsherds and all, so they are corresponded to this characters or with the Ashokan scripts?
It is more connected with Tamil Brahmi only, not with Ashokan Brahmi, because earlier the first discovery was rock inscriptions, which dated from 2nd century or 3rd century BC onwards. These inscribed potsherds, they are having more connection with this rock inscription from Tamil Brahmi only.
Okay.
Yeah.
So dating, maybe that's a debatable.
Yeah, because they did this dating and based on this AMS, radiocarbon dating, based on that only they have dated like 5th century, 6th century BC for this Tamil Brahmi, earliest Tamil Brahmi. And also from Sri Lanka also they have found like 4th century or 5th century. Yeah, Anuradhapura, yeah.
But
Yeah, so actually we have looked through this thing. We don't see any compelling evidence that it's actually earlier than Ashokan period. There is no published evidence. I know there's a lot of thing going on in the media, but there is nothing concrete to prove that it's actually predating the Ashokan period.
Yeah, because what I was saying last month, in January, there was some conference in IIT Madras.
Well, you can claim anything.
Yeah,
but I'm talking about you. The archaeologist can claim anything, but eventually the published paper has to have the concrete evidence that it is prior to Ashokan period. And the Sri Lankan claim in particular has no concrete evidence whatsoever that it's prior to Ashokan.
But this is based on AMS dating and some other...
we couldn't at least find any concrete evidence.
No, at least for the Sri Lankan thing, because I used to tell him about the Sri Lankan thing, and Solomon also mentioned this thing for the year. But when we look at the literature, there's there are, but the recent study, whatever you were saying, maybe we can look through that.
Yeah, let's see what further excavation results will come out.
So I'd like to say something, a few points. Since I work with inscriptions and Nandini already knows about it. When we are seeing Brahmi script from 3rd century BC or later on, we need to also simultaneously remind ourselves that Prakrit and Pali is the common language, is the language that people are speaking on a daily basis. And simultaneously, the works are being produced in, the works where Prakrit and Pali is being, they had influence on this Brahmi script. And also who came first, whether Ashokan or Tamil, it's ongoing debate. And there was obviously some form of quote-unquote proto. I don't like to use the word proto, but proto-Brahmi was already there. So where, that sort of alphabets were already circulating and Ashoka picked it up. And already it was not just Ashoka. After Ashoka, even in from 1st century BCE to 3rd century CE, in whole of Deccan, this sort of continuity of that same Brahmi script can be found, and along with regional variations. So Deccani variations can be found in the continuation of the Ashokan Brahmi in and around this Deccan region. So So context is extremely important while reading inscriptions and all, and also the variations. And I think Nandini wanted to actually put it out that, I mean, the crux of her whole, presentation is that James Princip is not the only one to decipher inscriptions, and many contacts, many networks are there, and she tried to prove that only throughout her presentation. Thank you.
Hi Nandini, I have a question regarding those graphs that you showed. The network, the knowledge network. So I was expecting that like there will be directed edges, as in this guy borrowed knowledge from this guy who did it way before, but all the networks were undirected. So why?
So you mean
how are the edges
no?
directed?
You mean the James Watt network, or you mean the Brahmi network?
James, what I saw that it's undirected.
Yeah, but you see those nodes are arranged in time.
Oh,
So
I
basically,
see.
you have to
Okay.
read the
Timeline.
links are going from top to bottom.
Same with the Brahmi inscription as
Same with the Brahmi.
1780 to 1840.
Yes.
That's how
And actually, there are arrowheads. It's just that the picture is, the arrowheads are so small
Oh,
you can't
okay.
see them.
All right.
In the Brahmi picture.
Brahmi picture.
Yes, they are directed, of course. Okay,
Right.
so if there are no other questions, let's thank the speaker once more.